As I said, I'm not the expert on the business of comics, even when I was in the business, but I'll do what I can to answer your questions.
Well, I mean, looking into your history preparing for the interview, say I'd say if you don't consider yourself an expert, you have quite the expertise, I'll say.
Well, I happened to be in the room
Uh,
when a lot of it happened.
but well, I'll do a little brief introduction for any for my professors or any of my audience that might see this, because even though they might not know your name, they'll definitely know your contributions with you being editor for the group of Superman titles in the early 90s. You got to oversee probably one of the most impactful moments in comics history with the death of Superman.
Yeah, and pretty much all I did there was to not stop it. I could have stopped it, but I didn't, and it was a good thing I didn't.
Well, so one of the first questions I thought to ask was before you were a creator or even just an intern at DC, you would have been a fan first.
Yep.
So, what do you think would be maybe the biggest disconnect between fans and creators? Or, in other words, what's something that you think fans don't consider about the creative side of comics?
Well, the funny thing for me is like I think back to what I was like when I was 15, and I would read a comic, and whether I liked it or I didn't like it, it never even occurred to me that it could have been something different.
Mm,
I knew there were humans making these things, but it just seemed to me that if this is what they did, this is what it's supposed to be. And as I got into working on comics, I realized that you could actually choose your own adventure, basically. And I think that the fans have to actually, you kind of find the guys who are talking to you, the writers, the artists, and stick with them. And if they do something you're not crazy about, don't destroy them on the internet. I mean, the internet is actually the biggest difference from when I was reading comics and what people are doing now. Back if I had a bone to pick and I wanted to send a letter, I had to write it, I had to pay money to send it, and then I had to get it to the post office or the mailbox. And it's a lot easier to just keep typing. It's if the keyboard's right in front of you. So I think people don't edit themselves as much, and they can hurt people's feelings again by just not understanding that when an artist or writer creates something, you shouldn't take it personally. You should just like it or don't like it.
mhm.
And you should tell people if you don't like it. But I think people go a little too far with insults and that kind of stuff. So it's a little bit of a hotbed out there.
I can completely agree. One thing I've been saying recently about the state of comics is it's probably more influx now than ever before. It's one week the fans are the happiest they've ever been, and then the next week it's they want to burn the industry to the ground.
Well, and it's like when I was a kid, I would buy Marvel comics and I would buy DC comics, and I didn't hate myself or one side of myself for picking the other company. I think the idea of being a Marvel zombie is very old school, and you should just follow the comics that you like. And not everything is a superhero comic these days, and I think that's a great thing.
Mhm.
I think that there's a lot more to choose from. The real problem is that it's hard for comic book stores to stay in business these days.
Mhm.
It's Comics are very costly now. I mean, when I was a kid, when I first started buying, they were 12 cents.
Oh wow.
If I had a dime, I could go around the neighborhood to the bubblegum machines and find 2 pennies that were stuck and didn't go through, and I could scooch them up and I get to go buy a comic. Now I got to find 499 pennies to get a comic book. And
Mhm.
it's a bit of a stretch, and it's kind of like the experience can be over very quickly. And that's you got to decide whether that kind of money is worth it for you or not.
So
It's a tougher place to be a fan. It's a tougher place to be a pro. It's a tougher place to be a publisher. Diamond Comics, the distributor, the biggest distributor out there, They filed for bankruptcy a couple of weeks ago,
Oh wow.
and it's that doesn't mean they're going to go anywhere. Somebody will either buy them or they'll, bankruptcy protection is just that. It's so that you can get your stuff back in order.
Mhm.
But it's a sign. It's a sign of how much support there is for this kind of stuff. What kind of comics do you like?
I try and dabble with everything. I don't like to keep myself in a box. Of course, my go-to is, of course, superhero comics. But I
That's
like
great.
supernatural. Throughout high school, I got into the manga Japanese comics.
I think that's big.
I try and keep have an open mind about different genres. I don't like to try and keep myself boxed in.
Well, when I was reading comics, which was a million years ago, uh, we had the Adventures of Superman TV show, and then we had the Batman TV show, and that was it. And the special effects on both of them are not the most amazing things you've ever seen. And now, even on the CW, we had 10 DC shows on there for a while. And it's like, and the effects are pretty good. And obviously, the movies can really do it up nice.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to say in comics that we had an unlimited budget and we could do pretty much anything we could think of. But I think movies and TV are getting there to that point now too. So we're competing there, which is a little tougher. There's an element of collecting that is fun, just getting every issue of a series in order and all that, and maybe finding back issues. Uh, that was always fun for me.
Yeah.
But it's just like if you just like a superhero story, you can get them pretty easy anywhere nowadays.
Mm-hmm. So that actually kind of leads into one of the next questions is digital production of comics. Um, some people say it's hurt the industry. Others say it's been a big boon to the industry. Do you have a specific viewpoint on that personally?
Well, I mean, I don't know what technique an artist uses to get the drawings in front of my eyeballs. All I know is that there are amazing artists working in comics now. And
Mm-hmm.
if it's because they're being able to meet the deadlines because they have the help of digital tools. I mean, digital tools is not the same as AI. Digital tools is just like using a ruler in the old days.
Mm-hmm.
It's like literally that. It's a tool, and you still have to have the ability and sensibility, and then knowledge of how to bring out your. Is it talent? Yeah, I guess but you just have to know how to do it, and that takes some time to get there to that point. So I think that it it's not an issue of what kind of a tool you're using. If you're using a digital tool, that's great. If you're still drawing on paper bags and it looks good when it's done, that's great too,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Uh, so kind of going back to your career and getting a little feedback. You were able to play both the role of a creator as a writer and somewhat on the executive side as an editor. Can you enlighten us as to like what your role as an editor might have given you for any hindsight as your time as a writer? Like, is there some stuff as a writer that you just didn't understand about the editors that once you got that role, you understood it?
I don't. I mean, I was always learning stuff. Every job I did, I learned something at, and at the same time, I think I was writing more stuff at the beginning of my career, which was great because it put me in the seat of the the talent who I was going to be spending the other half of my career talking to and either defending or steering or firing. And it's like because I knew what the limitations were because I'd actually done it. I think I stopped doing it partly because I wasn't the best guy on the stage. I think there were other people who could sing better than me, and the editors wouldn't necessarily think of me for a job because they'd had somebody better to pick from. Uh, I am a practical guy, and I always wanted to be. I wanted to have a steady job, and that's one of the reasons why I liked and wanted to be on staff. First of all, medical coverage, that's good.
Mhm.
But second of all, I just, even if I could make more writing and drawing comics, I just wanted it to be kind of more guaranteed,
Mm,
written down. And I got what I want. And I'd still be willing to write comics nowadays. I tend to try to make my stuff jokier than superhero fans like.
mm.
Uh, and that means I'd maybe be better for doing a Scooby-Doo here or there, or a Teen Titans Go comic somewhere.
Uh, well, that's really enlightening because personally, it's my dream to write for comics. Before I'm getting my master's in journalism, I got my bachelor's in creative writing because
Great.
that's my dream job. So
Well, the
get
good thing about writing is that you could just do it. You
mhm,
don't need anyone's permission to do it, but you do want to pay the bills
mhm,
ultimately. Right now you won't have as many bills as you will in 10 years.
mhm.
So now's the time to just do it. That's the catchphrase everybody uses.
Yeah.
The thing to know if you are trying to sell your writing to somebody or sell yourself as a viable choice is to just don't take any of it personally. When I was an editor, if I had one opening, I could hire only one guy to
Mhm,
do it, and that meant that there were hundreds of other guys who thought I should have picked them and would get mad that they weren't picked. And it's like you just got to not get mad. You got to just say, oh, well, that wasn't the right doorway to be standing in this week, and move along, go to the next one. And the other thing is to know that if you want to do Marvel or DC superheroes, don't necessarily show up with a finished script using their characters that you think you're going to just sell to them, because generally they want to be they should have plans for a year in a row, and you don't know what those are, so it may not fit what their plans are. And it's just to show them that what you do understand about the characters, and that kind of thing. You didn't show them a script that has Batman shooting all the bad guys,
Yeah.
because that's not the right script. But they just again, just being aware that putting in that work on spec projects is good.
Mhm,
The other thing you can do is to write your own characters and your own stuff, and maybe team up with a young artist. If you go to conventions, there's plenty of people who are just starting out as artists as well.
mhm,
Find somebody whose art style you like. Don't pick someone whose art doesn't fit your story.
mhm,
And then, just as buddies, do samples for each other, because that way you have sample that is drawn and he has a sample that is written.
mhm.
And it it it's fun to do that kind of stuff, and then you become enemies down the road.
Yeah. Um, well, that actually kind of led to one of the future questions I had. Is do you have any advice for the person that wants to be a creator? And you kind of already got.
Well, yeah, the don't take it personally is the biggest one that I have to offer. The other one is, if you really want to do it, don't give up. Even if you have to work a day job. I worked in a rug factory before I got my foot in the door. And it's like, and my knees they're not my friends anymore, because I was doing a lot of crawling around. And it's you just do whatever you have to do, and then just go home and write, and try to fit the niche. And again, everything you write or draw is not going to be necessarily bought right off your shelf,
Mhm,
but it is going to show somebody what you're able to do. When I went to the High School of Art and Design, and I studied cartooning there, and that's how I got selected to be an intern at DC. I
mhm,
also was in New York. That helped.
mhm,
And but then I didn't go right into the business. I went to college, and I studied with Will Eisner and Harvey Kurtzman, who were major players in creating comics in the first place. And I did stuff that I thought I could then, like, they would give an assignment and I would just try to answer the assignment, by writing and drawing something that I thought would be a good sample when I got out. So I did a lot of gag cartoons. I tried to get in at the National Lampoon and the New Yorker and Playboy and all those places. And obviously, I didn't get into any of them, but I have all the rejection slips. And it's going to make a nice little frame collage someday. And that's going to be fun. But, and then ultimately, I brought my stuff up to, when I got out of college, I said, well, Mad Magazine. Oh, the thing I learned when I was an intern was I was Xeroxing art by Bernie Wrightson, Walt Simonson, Jack Kirby for the editors. That's what the intern did. And I was looking at this art and I was going like, there's no way I'm ever going to be able to do this. I can't do it. And it wasn't sad. I was just glad that I had the opportunity to come to that conclusion so that I could concentrate on doing humorous stuff.
Mhm.
Because I am a wise guy and I have a decent sense of humor. So I started doing funnier stuff and I did samples and I was going to bring them up to Mad, but Mad was kind of a closed house. They didn't really add new guys all the time. And Cracked, I didn't know what Cracked was. I didn't know what their parent company was, so I was a little afraid to go there and then not get paid. But they do pay. So that was just me being fearful. But Marvel was putting out their version of Mad, and it was called Crazy Magazine. And I brought my stuff up to the editor there, and that was Larry Hama. And he looked at my stuff and he goes, well, your drawings aren't that good, but I really like your sensibility in humor. And he gave me my own page every month in Crazy Magazine. I was the inside back cover of Crazy every every month. And I was going to be allowed to do whatever I wanted to do. But it wasn't like I was going to be doing strips. What happened was after he looked at all my portfolio stuff, he goes, "Do you have anything else to show me?" And I said, "Well, I just have these sketchbooks." And my sketchbooks were just filled with jokes. And he goes, "Give me a page of these jokes." And that's what I did. And then my foot was in the door at Marvel, and I would go up and drop off my pages. And then I'd be around the editors. And one day, Larry Hama said to me, "Do you want to be an assistant editor?" And I was like, "Sure." What is that? What do they do? I don't know. I didn't know what an assistant editor did, but I was like, whatever it is, I'm sure I can do it. And then I interviewed with Mark Grunwald and I got in as an assistant editor. And within 2 years, I got promoted to editor. And 2 more years, I got fired by the editor in chief. But then DC picked me up. So it's a happy ending. But it was just like, it wasn't it was being in the right door at the right time, but it was also choosing the door. I mean, I had a vote and I chose a lot of doors that didn't open to me. I knocked and knocked and knocked on New Yorker and Playboy, and they didn't want to have anything to do with me. And that's okay because I had a place to land. So I don't know if you're friends with me on Facebook or not, but I have albums there, photo albums of most of the stuff that I drew at Crazy. So that you can go through that if you want to.
Oh, that's cool. I was contemplating add you, but I didn't know if like, oh, this kid that just messaged me out and now he's adding a friend request. So I didn't know if I
Well, you're welcome to try. I can always just reject it. But my biggest problem right now is that I'm going to be running out of room because they only let you have 5,000 friends,
Mm.
which is that's still plenty of friends. But what I've started doing is when this is creepy, when the birthday list comes up, I check on the people and I see A, are they still alive? That's one thing. Some of them aren't. And then if you're mostly posting in another language, I'm never going to understand what you're doing. And even if you like me and my work, I'm sorry, I just can't. I need the room now.
Mhm.
So I guess I'm kind of like Facebook ice.
All right. Well, we are coming up on about 25 minutes. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. So,
Well, I don't know if I answered everything you need or want or
well, you gave a lot of great insight, and I basically just got one more question, just kind of feeding off your knowledge and experience. Do you have any, in your personal opinion, do you have any idea on like where the industry may go from where it is right now?
that's the magic question.
Yeah.
That's the one I didn't want you to ask because I don't have any idea where it's going because nobody has any idea where it's going.
Mm.
It goes where the readers tell it to go. And I think that that's important to know. There are some behind the scenes things. Like I said, the distribution system is in a little mess right now, and comic book stores are not as plentiful as they were. Does that tell you where the industry is going?
Uh, yeah.
If everybody knew where the industry was going, we would already be there.
Hmm.
It's like it's everybody's like, oh man, this comic book stinks. Yeah, but they didn't start this comic book saying, I got a really stinky idea. Let's put it out there. Everybody thinks what they're doing is got a shot
Hmm.
and they have hopes and they believe that something's going to work and then it works or it doesn't work, and it's like, there's been 85 years of Superman stuff and some of it works and some of it doesn't.
And actually, that whole thing, it did prompt one more question before I let you
All
go.
right. I'm
Um,
not running anywhere. I'm
uh,
retired. I got nothing else to do.
it was talking kind of like changes and stuff, and it popped in my head. If a creator wants to change a character, like here recently, in the last 10 years, Superman and Lois had their son, John Kent. In the 90s, whenever Con-El Superboy was created, or at the beginning of the New 52, Alan Scott, he went from having two kids to being of a different orientation. Is that generally a call of the writer pitching it, or is that more of uh say top down, say this is our idea, make the story from it?
Yes, that's the answer.
Okay.
It's all of the above. It's sometimes the writer comes in and says, I got a great idea. And then they go to the editor and the editor says, oh, that's not a good idea. So we're not going to do that. Or they'll say, oh, I like that. I still have bosses and I have to check with the president of the company.
Mm,
And I was lucky on my years on Superman that I had Jeanette Kahn and Paul Levitz and Dick Giordano. They were the bosses. And they were in tune with what we were doing. And they would let us do a lot of crazy things. Small stuff like firing Jimmy Olsen from the Daily Planet. It's not the biggest thing in the world. Of course, he'll get his job back, but it might generate some outside interest, so they got to be aware of it, and they have to kind of put their stamp of approval on it.
mm,
If you want to have Lois and Clark get married, they definitely get a vote in that.
mm,
And again, they liked how we were doing the Superman comics, so they let us do it, and then that led to the Lois and Clark TV show and them doing it too. And when you're married, maybe you're going to have kids. So then somebody had to get it approved that they would have kids. There were no kids when I was on the books, but that doesn't mean it was a bad idea. It just would have been too soon. We wanted to give them a chance to be, you know, uh, the Thin Man and his wife first.
mm.
Uh, so, but when they got there, I thought, this is a fine idea. Is it actually physically possible for an alien and a human to make a baby? I don't know, but there are flying people out there. So it's like if we say so, then we can do that.
Mm-hmm.
The only idea that I don't think was a great idea was aging uh Jonathan Kent up
Mm. I
too
do know
fast.
that was a big point of contention whenever it first happened, especially because it uh, ended effectively the Super Sons title.
Which I thought was great. Pete Tomasi was doing great stuff on that title. And we did a really good direct-to-video movie.
Hmm.
So check that out. Super Sons, good one. It looks great too. But it was like, it just you we're missing out on an element of super stuff with the young teenage mind and all that. We're not there. Now you lost it,
Hmm.
you know? And it's fine that he's gay, but it would have been nicer to see him slowly discover that.
Hmm.
And how do people handle that when they're kids? And now we skipped right over it all. So that's the only thing that I thought was a little bit of a mistake.
So if you had to guess, if you had to guess, would that aging up have come from the executive down or from the writer up? If you had to guess.
I am guessing. I really don't know, but I think it was the writer.
Okay.
Was that when Bendis was on the books?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess he wanted to leave his mark on it,
Mm.
but if I was the boss at that point, I wouldn't have approved it because it does affect other things,
Hmm.
like the Super Sons. And like I said, I think it negates story possibilities that will now never have a chance to do.
Hmm.
So, and if you de-age them, that's even hokier. That's just now you kind of got to live with it.
Of course, we get a crisis about every 3 years, so maybe in the next crisis, we can
Yep.
have Jonathan de-aged back with Damien.
Yeah, I guess you could. Well, what they should do is a story where Damien ages and Jonathan de-ages.
Yeah. Well, that's about all I have for the interview. Now I just kind of got the jokes and questions like with Tim Drake, he's perpetually stuck at 17, but now Damien, whenever Damien was introduced, he was 10, Tim was 17.
Ugh.
Tim is 17 and Damien's 15. So,
Well, it continuity over, like I said, 85 years.
mhm,
I was on the Superman books for 10 years and we did 10 Christmas stories in 10 years.
mhm,
So it's like time is it's all timey-wimey, as they say in
yes.
jolly old England.
Well,
It's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be perfect.
mhm. Well, that is about all I had for the interview. Once again, I just want to thank you for taking the time to
Oh,
sit down.
no, no problem.
I'll definitely be sure to add you on Facebook. Um,
Okay, and hopefully you'll like my stupid cartoons.
I'm sure I will. Uh, but yeah, no, I greatly appreciate it. This will definitely be a big help for the rest of my thesis. So.
All right, great. I'm glad to have helped.